Hey, what's up, guys? Ken here from the Retro Toy Escapades channel in Malaysia. Thanks for joining me. Now, it's been about a week now since we've had Masters of the Universe Revelation. We've all seen it. We couldn't wait for it. Now we've seen it for ourselves. And I would say that in the past 7 days, the internet, wherever you go, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, any form of social media platform, it's just been blowing up with everybody expressing their thoughts, feelings, expressions, opinions about the new show. And I gotta say, I do wonder where when it comes to things like this, right, how many of these so-called platforms are expressing views from actual fans, okay, because the narrative seems to be overwhelmingly negative. Okay, like I said, I did do a review of the first episode and I talked openly about how I felt about it. There was a lot there that I actually liked, and there's a lot that I could see, that would be coming up in the show that I probably wouldn't think was such a great idea, or that I wasn't like fully invested in. But overall, if you've watched the entire first 5 episodes of the series, I gotta ask you, okay, if you're a fan of the show, okay, if you're a fan of the property, all right, if you're a fan of Masters of the Universe, could you not see that the show is really so much more than just being about Tila as the front runner of the entire series? Okay, it's just so much more than Tila being the main star, because honestly, a lot of the narrative online seems to be about how they've just switched out He-Man and then they've put Tila in charge. If you've actually watched the show, that's not even what happens at all, okay? They just made Tila like the person who's supposed to be leading this particular mission, all right? To sort of like bring balance back to everything that's happening in Eternia. Now, she's on a journey, and the journey involves so many other elements that are far more interesting, okay, than her story. I did say, in my review that I found Tila to be the weakest element, okay? I wasn't invested in her story or any of the dialogue that she was given or anything that she had to do. They just made her a pretty uninteresting character. And by default, everybody else in the show seemed so much more interesting, okay? And they actually focused a lot on the supporting characters as well. We had like 5 episodes. The first episode, I would say, and probably the first episode is like the only one that's actually written by Kevin Smith, and that was like total fan service. If you just went into it and you watched the first episode alone and you checked out after that, I think that, you'd see some pretty shocking things in there, some interesting revelations, maybe not everything that you'd agree with, but overall that first episode was solid. Okay, then we've got like maybe 3 episodes after that where the story kind of like diverts into the quest that they're on, and you see a lot of different characters and different elements and things like that. By the time you get down to the 5th episode, which is the finale, the main characters are back, okay? I mean, you do get to see He-Man and Skeletor back, by the time you get down to the 5th episode. Okay, so what happens actually between those 3 episodes in the middle? You know what? The story wasn't really even about Tila to begin with. Like I said, to me, the entire show was more about Evelyn's journey, all right? Evelyn is basically the person that steals the entire show. She's the main star as far as I'm concerned. And I gotta say this, that you could have any opinion you want, but if you're telling me that Evelyn was a letdown, then you know what, we've got a problem. These days it seems really hard to just enjoy stuff for just what it is. Okay, if you want to talk about it, you have to be really careful about the audience that you're sharing stuff with. Why does it gotta be like that? Okay, why does it need to be this way? Okay, it's like stepping on a minefield, all right? You're getting into the minefield, you don't know where the explosion is going to come from, okay? Who's going to say what to what you're sharing? And I feel that a lot of times, a lot of the information that is being expressed, shared, comes from points of view that are not fully researched, that are not fully fair or justified. Now, I've seen videos here from creators that I really respect, a lot of channels that I actually follow. I really do appreciate their expressions and their opinions on a lot of subject matters, and most of the time they are really talking about pop culture stuff. But it seems that when there's something happening in pop culture, that seems to be of particular note, where something really drastic happens with the property, everybody wants to start talking about it, and you tend to get the feeling that not all of these views are entirely sincere. They're just going with a viewpoint that seems to be popular at the time. And a lot of the views shared on this particular series, I saw some very, very strong comments about how it was disrespectful, and the people who were making it just weren't fans. They didn't understand what people wanted. And I just felt that, honestly speaking, a lot of that is probably really unfair. Okay, obviously this thing, is being put together by people who are on some level definitely passionate about the property. You can't deny that. Okay, you can't deny it when you see, total fan service moments being offered throughout the entire show. Okay, and they are making an effort here, definitely, to switch up the status quo. Because why? The classic battle between He-Man and Skeletor, it's been done. Okay, it's been done in countless incarnations. All right, and every other incarnation prior to this has met with some success and practically fizzled out after that. I would say that He-Man as an animation series and the toy line had its heyday in the 80s, and it pretty much vanished after that, but it did come back very strongly for a brief moment in the early 2000s with the 2002 series, where we had the toy line, a simultaneous relaunch of the animated series and the comics, and for a while it seemed like He-Man was really back. And that was actually the only time that I remember as a fan that I actually had the financial means to fully invest in the property. They were like new toys on the shelves back in 2002, and I was actually able to purchase these things. Okay, so I was caught up in that whole thing, but I was really disappointed because the whole concept fizzled out after, the cartoon fizzled out like about 3 seasons, and when there was no longer a cartoon on the air, the toys disappeared too. Okay, and over here in Malaysia, I don't think we even got like maybe close to about 50% of the stuff that was being put out there. All right, so it was pretty disappointing. I was kind of wondering for a long time. One day I'm in the stores, and the shelves are filled with He-Man merchandise, and a week or two later, everything's being taken down and cleared out. All right, so I'm kind of wondering to myself, what happened? Okay, the concept tried to restart itself, and it didn't really fully catch on. So this new incarnation currently that we're seeing here on TV is obviously appealing to a much more older audience, all right? But it also comes at a time where He-Man and Masters of the Universe as a brand is being relaunched internationally to global success thanks to the Origins toy line. Now let's talk about that for a while. Now, I've mentioned before that I'm a fan of the Masters of the Universe toy line first, okay, before any other interpretation of the franchise, okay? I'm a fan of the toys first. I don't really care far too much about how the characters are being represented in the comics or the cartoon series, or even if there's going to be a live action movie that finally makes it back to screen. I don't really care too much about how the characters are being represented in those incarnations. I hope that they're represented well. Okay, and I hope there's something there that gives us fans more to feel inspired by. But honestly speaking, for me, and I think a lot of real Masters of the Universe fans, the love for the franchise comes from the toys itself. Okay, and I think that Origins comes at a time where a lot of collectors are finally really financially stable, especially on a global level. Okay, I'm from Malaysia, and when the He-Man brand was like really popular in the 80s, basically most of us here came from families that were government servants and things like that, and the average household income back then was really low. But these days, a lot of collectors have the access to additional income. The jobs are a lot better. The economy is a lot better. And they can feed their passions, indulging in stuff from their past that they really wanted. And now they can, all right? Now they can have it. And it seems that the timing for this Masters of the Universe Origin series is perfect. Okay, people who've not been fans of the franchise for a very long time are suddenly noticing it again because it's right out there in the toy shelves. Okay, it's back in regular retail, and this is something that we've not seen for practically the last decade, I would say. I mean, there was a period where, Matty Collector was doing the very successful Classics series, but that was something that was only available online. And the success of the series was primarily driven just by the passion of the fans, okay? The fans who actually invested and collected the toys. It was, in fact, the effort and the passion of the MOTU toy collecting community that was keeping the brand alive all through these dark years. Now, throughout this period, there was, in fact, no other real supporting media other than the comic books, okay? DC Image was publishing books, throughout this period, and we did get a lot of stuff that was happening with Masters of the Universe. But how many people are even aware of these stories that took place in the comics? Comics are pretty much a dying medium, all right? They have a cult following these days, and I bet you right now, if I told you that He-Man crossed over with the Thundercats in the comic books, I doubt, okay, many of you out there have even actually read that storyline, okay? Some of you would have, yeah, definitely. I mean, I did, okay? But I bet, most of these people who are commenting online right now, talking about the franchise, okay, and stuff like that, most of them would not have even been aware that these things took place in the comics. So it was essentially always about the toys, okay? The toys were the primary driving force for collectors and fans. And then we get to something like Origins, for the first time ever, is available at commercial retail. Now, this comes at a point where people have more spending power, and fans of toys or just fans of pop culture who've never even thought about He-Man for the last, 15, 20 years, they're suddenly noticing the brand again, okay? It's out there once more. And the thing is just that Mattel made an effort, okay, to make sure that there was sufficient He-Man and Skeletor figures for everybody who wanted them. And it came to a point that if you were to walk into a toy store, all you would see were just He-Man and Skeletor figures. And that was the same here, even all the way out here in Malaysia. Now, what happened to all the other characters? Okay, this is a whole universe that we're talking about here. They produced so few amounts of the other supporting characters that there simply wasn't enough to go around. Okay, and some of these characters have never been restocked again until today. Okay, even the Tila figure, all right, that was from Wave 1, we've never even seen her here, all right, outside of the first month that wave was released. What I'm trying to say here is basically the toys, okay, were trying to give us more of He-Man and Skeletor. Why? Because they were the main faces of the brand. And then it turns out that fans started to get tired of seeing the same old thing over and over again, okay? They wanted to see more of the entire universe. So let me ask you this. This particular Revelation cartoon phases out He-Man and Skeletor for a period of time and actually gives us fans so much more of the remaining universe. Okay, we get to see so much more character development in all the other characters that were involved there. Well, not every single one of them, but for hell, most of them, okay? There was like the episode that was primarily centered on Man-at-Arms. That was freaking fantastic, okay? How about the one with Skaglo and Orko? I mean, these are supporting characters that add to the universe, okay? They are not just focusing mainly on the struggle between He-Man and Skeletor. Now, just tell me this, okay? If you're a fan of the franchise, could you not see that this is what was happening, all right? Do you just think that it was just simply an excuse to inject some sort of ideology or some sort of agenda into the whole thing? I don't know, female empowerment and stuff like that. Frankly speaking, like I said, Tila, characters like Evelyn, the sorceress, I mean, they're like the only female characters, the main female characters from the vintage series. They hardly did a lot in those episodes, and maybe this is a time within the span of maybe 5 episodes for them to do a little bit more. I can't say that everything that they did was actually appealing or interesting, but it was just an excuse to just give us more of the entire universe. And that's what I think the Revelation cartoon succeeded at, okay? To just give us more of the universe that these characters live in. So, to all the fans out there, just let me know, okay? Was this series something that was completely offensive to you? And if so, why exactly was that the case? When I think about it, the essential storyline here is still the battle between He-Man and Skeletor, whether you want it to be or not, okay? It still comes back to He-Man and Skeletor. It's just like Transformers is always going to be about Optimus Prime and Megatron, even if they've freaking take them to a planet with animals. Whatever happens, okay, it's still gonna be about Optimus Prime versus Megatron. Even in the 90s, okay, there was that time where they sent He-Man into the future, okay? They freaking sent him into the future to remove him from this entire struggle on Eternia. And guess what? Skeletor followed him, okay? It's the same thing, all right? It's just that I just feel that sometimes there has to be an attempt at least to make things a little bit different. Whether or not it's always successful, I mean, maybe you gotta leave certain things up to chance, okay, all right? You know what I mean? Maybe you can't get all the elements entirely accurate the first time, but I don't think that this cartoon was a work of disrespect. I definitely do not feel that way, and I think that in conclusion, a lot of comments that are being shoved at the series is just entirely in many ways uncalled for, and it's just being put out there to drive engagement, but in a negative way that just doesn't even help the brand at all, okay? It doesn't help the brand at all, and it's going to dissuade people from supporting it perhaps, and even giving us the opportunity to have more toys down the road, okay? They just announced that Wave 2 series of figures for Revelation, and those look freaking fantastic, okay? Come on, Spycore, let's talk about that, okay? But let's talk about that in a different video. But meantime, I want to hear from you guys out there. Honestly, just give it to me straight, okay? If you think back about the show, and maybe if you got a chance to watch it again, how are you really feeling about it, okay, when you consider the fact that they're actually trying to do something that's just a little bit different here, okay? Well, I'll catch you guys again real soon. Stay subscribed, and thank you.